Abiogenesis. How life began on Earth. Abiogenesis is the scientific idea that explains how life started on Earth from things that were not alive, also known as the natural origin theory. This theory tells us that simple chemicals on our planet long ago slowly joined together to make more complicated molecules. Over time, these complicated molecules grew into the first living cells. Scientists believe this happened naturally without any outside help, taking millions and millions of years to complete. This process did not happen quickly or all at once. Instead, life developed step by step through natural changes over a very long time. Many scientists have studied what Earth was like billions of years ago and have done experiments to understand how life could have begun this way. Today, most scientists agree that abiogenesis is the best explanation we have for how life started on Earth, even though we still do not understand all the details about how it happened. What early Earth was like. About 4.5 billion years ago, Earth looked completely different from the planet we know today. It was extremely hot, with volcanoes erupting everywhere, and no oxygen in the air that we breathe today. Instead of oxygen, the atmosphere was filled with different gases like methane, ammonia, water vapor, and carbon dioxide. There were no plants, animals, or any living things anywhere on the planet, just simple chemicals floating around in the oceans and the air. These harsh conditions might seem terrible for life, but scientists think they were actually perfect for the chemical reactions that could lead to the first living things. The oceans back then were like a huge bowl of chemical soup, where different chemicals mixed together and reacted with each other. Energy came from many sources, including powerful ultraviolet light from the sun, lightning bolts, and heat from volcanoes. All this energy helped push chemical reactions forward. Over millions of years, simple molecules like water, methane, and ammonia began combining with each other to form more complex organic molecules. Some of these complex molecules were amino acids, which are the basic building blocks that make up proteins. Proteins are extremely important for all living things because they do most of the work inside cells. The Oparin-Haldane hypothesis. In the 1920s, smart scientists named Alexander Oparin and J.B.S. Haldane came up with similar ideas about how life might have started. Even though they worked separately and did not know about each other's work, they both suggested that life could have begun in the early oceans through a process they called chemical evolution. These scientists pointed out that early Earth had what they called a reducing atmosphere. This means there was very little oxygen in the air, which was actually good for making organic molecules. Oxygen can break down organic molecules, so having less oxygen allowed these important chemicals to form more easily. They believed that energy from sunlight and lightning caused simple molecules to stick together and form more complex ones. Oparin came up with an interesting idea about something called coservates. These were tiny droplets made of organic molecules that could form by themselves in water. Think of them like little bubbles that could concentrate molecules inside them and allow chemical reactions to happen more easily and efficiently. Kuhnerin thought these coservates might have been like very simple, primitive cells that eventually developed into the first real living cells. The Miller-Urey experiment. One of the most famous and important experiments that supported the idea of abiogenesis was performed in 1953 by two scientists named Stanley Miller and Harold Urey. They wanted to test whether the building blocks of life could really form under the conditions that existed on early Earth. To do this experiment, they built a special laboratory setup that recreated what they thought early Earth's atmosphere was like. They mixed together gases like methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor in a sealed container. Then they added electrical sparks to simulate the lightning that would have been common on early Earth. They let this experiment run for a whole week, and the results were amazing. When they checked what had formed, they found several different organic molecules, including amino acids. This was incredibly exciting because amino acids are the building blocks that make up proteins. Proteins are essential for all life. While this experiment did not actually create living cells, it provided strong evidence that the first important steps toward life could happen naturally under the right conditions. The RNA world hypothesis. One of the biggest puzzles in understanding how life began is figuring out how the first living cells could make copies of themselves. All living things today use DNA to store their genetic information and proteins to do the work of staying alive. But both DNA and proteins are very complex molecules, and it seems impossible that they could have formed at the same time. Scientists came up with an idea called the RNA world hypothesis to solve this problem. RNA is a molecule that is similar to DNA but simpler. The amazing thing about RNA is that it can do two important jobs at once. It can store genetic information like DNA, and it can also speed up chemical reactions like proteins do. The RNA world hypothesis suggests that the very first forms of life were RNA molecules that could make copies of themselves. These self-copying RNA molecules could also perform the chemical reactions needed to stay alive. Over millions of years, these RNA-based life forms slowly evolved into more complex cells that eventually started using DNA to store information and proteins to do work, like the cells we see in all living things today. Other supporting theories. Scientists have come up with several other ideas about how life might have started on Earth. The hydrothermal vent theory suggests that life began near deep-sea volcanic vents on the ocean floor. These vents shoot out hot water that is rich in minerals and chemicals. The energy and chemicals from these vents could have provided everything needed for life to begin. The vents also create a protected environment that could keep early molecules safe, while they developed into more complex forms. Another idea is called the clay hypothesis. Some scientists think that clay minerals might have played an important role in the origin of life. Clay can help organize and concentrate organic molecules, acting like a surface where chemical reactions could happen more easily. The clay might have worked like a template that helped molecules arrange themselves in the right way to form more complex structures. There is also the ice origin theory, which suggests that life might have started in very cold, icy environments. Ice could have protected delicate molecules from harmful radiation from the sun and helped keep them stable while they slowly developed into more complex forms. The ice would have acted like a protective shield that gave molecules time to evolve. Challenges and unanswered questions. Even though abiogenesis is accepted by most scientists as the best explanation for how life began, there are still many things we do not understand. Scientists still cannot fully explain how simple molecules became complex, enough to form the first living cells that could reproduce and carry out all the processes needed for life. The experiments, like the Miller-Urey experiment, have shown us how the building blocks of life can form naturally. But the next steps are much harder to understand and recreate in the laboratory. How did these building blocks join together to form cells that could make copies of themselves and perform metabolism? How did they develop the ability to grow, respond to their environment, and evolve into new forms? Researchers around the world continue to work on these questions. They're exploring different environments where life might have started and testing different chemical pathways that could lead from simple molecules to living cells. New discoveries are being made all the time, and each one helps us understand a little more about this amazing process. Conclusion. Abiogenesis provides a natural and scientific explanation for how life began on our planet. It shows us that life could have started from simple, non-living chemicals through natural processes that we can study and understand. This theory is supported by experiments and scientific observations that demonstrate how the building blocks of life can form under the right conditions. Although we still have many questions about exactly how life began, abiogenesis helps us understand the incredible journey from lifeless matter to living organisms. It shows us how science works. By gathering evidence, doing experiments, and using reason to explain the natural world around us. The study of abiogenesis continues to reveal new insights about one of the most fundamental questions humans have always asked. Where did life come from? Thank you for watching. I think you got a clear idea about abiogenesis. The natural origin theory. If so, please like. Subscribe to watch more videos and share with like minds.